thank you everyone for joining. Really do appreciate it. Hope you're having a good day. We now have Rohan, who's going to do an introduction to Docker workshop, running you through what is Docker, how to use Docker commands, what the Dockerfile is, and then how to actually deploy a container. So really do appreciate you coming along today, Rohan, and I'm going to let you take it away.
All right. Thank you, Will. So yeah, sorry we had some troubles initially, and I hope you're able to see my window, which is shared. It's a presentation. So, okay, so let's get started with Docker. All right. So these are the topics we're going to cover. What is Docker? Why do we need Docker? How to install Docker? I think we had Will had probably told you to in the meeting description there was a link on how to install Docker. So since this is going to be a hands-on, it's good. I hope you guys have already installed Docker and are ready.
There's a link if you haven't already, but I did tell people just before we got started to get that set up. So hopefully everyone should have it set up now.
Yeah, that'll be nice if you have already installed Docker. Then we'll quickly jump to, we'll just cover a little bit of conceptual stuff about Docker, not a lot, because I want this to be hands-on, and we'll quickly get to using Docker on the command line. If you're using Linux and OS X, I believe the command line will work just as I'm going to do it, and on Windows, I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure how it will work. We'll then look at what are the advantages of using a Dockerfile and why do we need Dockerfile and Docker Compose. And finally, we'll take a look at GitHub Actions. We'll do some real deployment. We'll do continuous deployment. I'll be creating a simple Vue.js application, and we'll be creating a repository on the MLH group. And using GitHub Actions, we'll learn how to do release continuous deployments using a single command. All this thanks to Docker and GitHub Actions. So a little bit about me. I have more than 15 years of experience in full stack web development. I started my career in Perl, JavaScript, and Linux. Very early on, I was hands-on on Linux. We worked on a project where I had to customize the entire booting process of the Linux kernel. I believe at that time I was using Red Hat Linux, and we had this Anaconda kickstart configuration file. Using that, you could automate the entire installation of Linux. Basically, it's called the unattended Linux installation. And I went a bit further. The installation not only installed the Linux kernel, but it also installed the HTTP server, set up the DNS server, set up the network interfaces. Everything was automated. I'm a Linux geek. I think you can guess that by now. And I'm an advocate for all things Linux, even the Linux desktop. I've also authored video courses on Webpack with React and regular expressions using Python. So I've done a lot of front-end programming as well. I currently love programming in Elixir and Phoenix. I know Python, Perl, JavaScript, React, and Vue. I'm a mentor in this MLH fellowship for the pods 0.3.1 and 2, and we are working on JavaScript, React, and Julia. And I didn't know Julia, so one of the good things about this fellowship is that I'm going to learn Julia. And I have done a bit of machine learning in Python, and I'm trying my best to convert all that knowledge and do it in Julia. So that's a good challenge for me. Okay, so a little bit of, I think I'll just do a quick round. And is my voice clear? Is it legible? I would really like feedback right now.
Yep, all good on this end.
Cool. So what is Docker? What Docker is basically allows you to containerize your applications. Let me go to the next slide. So a container, what is a container? A container packages up code and dependencies. This is very important. We have all gone through dependency hell. And once you start using Docker, that it solves a very important problem of dependencies. It's lightweight. Docker is not like a virtual machine VMware and VirtualBox are examples of virtual machines which are tied to the hardware, and they impose an entirely new kernel as well as an operating system on top of your hardware. Docker does not do that. It is lightweight. It shares the machine's OS kernel. It takes up much less space than VMs, and it is secure. Let's go back to the previous slide. So you can see we have the host operating system. On top of that, we have Docker engine. So the only dependency, unfortunately or fortunately, is Docker engine. You need to have Docker engine on all your deployment and your development machines. After that, all the containers. So we have a few concepts which I'd like to get across right now. Is we have a concept of Docker image and Docker container. A Docker image is, you can think of it as uh, a binary file, an actual file sitting on your hard disk, and a container is an instance of that image. So if you think about the object-oriented paradigm, it's like you have a class and then you have objects. So a Docker image is like a class, and objects of that class are like containers. So for a one image, you can spawn several containers. So a container is ephemeral and unmutable. You cannot change containers. So that is, I hope I got across the concept of image and containers. We learn more as we get hands-on. This is the link to installing Docker. Okay, so we learn about some handy Docker commands. Let me switch to my terminal. I have to share my okay, so this is my terminal. I hope the font size is big enough to be able to read. So let me start with, let's see if I've typed Docker. Docker is extremely useful. The command line has tab completion, and you'll see there are a lot of commands to learn. We'll just start with the basic ones. So if you see the hello world of Docker, what they suggest is to do Docker run hello world. So what is Docker trying to do? As I said, the first thing is the Docker engine requires an image, and run will spawn a container for that particular image. So Docker will first search your local hard disk for the image. If it does not find it, it will go to the registry. Now, Docker also has a concept similar to GitHub of a repository. In Docker, it's called a registry. So by default, your Docker command line will go to docker.io, and we can also have private registries. You can also create your own registry and upload and download images to your registry. So Docker run stated that unable to find hello world, the name of the image hello world locally, so it pulled it from the remote Docker hub, which is on docker.io, pulled the image, and it ran the image. Now let me try running this again. So what happened now? You can see that this is the output of the entire hello world image, or rather this is the output of the container. Hello world is the image, and run looked up the image for hello world and created a container out of that image. So to inspect, to take a list of your images, we have Docker images. So you can see I have hello world. This is on my local hard disk. All images need to be tagged. By default, the tag is latest. If you don't specify a tag, it will assume the tag as latest, and you can create tags according to your release version numbers. An image ID is unique across all images. And you can see the size of this image. It's awesome. That's 13 kilobytes. I believe this image is a single Go binary. By the way, Docker is written completely in Go. It's very, yeah, it's complex. I mean, they have done a lot of. Yeah, right now, just to quickly answer, on Windows, Docker initially only supported Linux, and on Windows, it used VirtualBox. So if you downloaded Docker for Windows, it actually also downloads Oracle VirtualBox and spawns the Linux image, spawns the Linux VM, and then allows you to run Docker on top of that. But Windows 10, the latest release of Windows 10, supports Docker natively. So yes, it is possible to run Docker on Windows. So Docker images lists the images on your hard disk. What else? We learned about Docker run. So I can say Docker run, and you can do tab completion. So this is what Docker run will do. Now, as I mentioned, we have a registry. So let's try, since the hello world is very bare bones, let's try to pull Ubuntu. I'm going to pull Ubuntu, and by default, I'm going to pull the latest Ubuntu. You can see using default tag latest. Yeah, that's pretty fast. You can see this is the registry which Docker uses by default, docker.io. Now if I run Docker images, I can see I have Ubuntu. Now, do you think I can do this? Docker run Ubuntu? I can. But Ubuntu is considered a base image. So in Docker, we have a concept of building images on top of other images. So I can build in this workshop. What we're going to do is, as I said, we're going to deploy a Vue app. Now Vue is bundled as an HTML and JavaScript code, and to deploy that on a server, I'm going to use Nginx. So what I need to do is I need to build an image which contains Nginx. How do I do that? First thing is I need a base image, Ubuntu. Now run supports some command line arguments, I for interactive and T for terminal mode, teletype mode, and then a command to run. So let me try bash. So what I'm telling Docker to do, I'm telling Docker to take the Ubuntu image and spawn a container with the bash command. I've now actually entered the Ubuntu container. You can confirm it. The containers are CH rooted, they are isolated. I'm not able to see the outside world. Let me open another tab. I'll increase the font size over here. Now, of course, this is on my host, and this is inside the container. You can see this is very bare bones. And I'll show you something which now should make things much clearer to you. This is df in Linux is showing my partitions. And on my host, you will see that Docker actually shows the entire, it's showing the hard disk of my host. So that is what I mean by Docker is lightweight. Docker uses the same kernel and the same partitions of your host operating system. But obviously it's contained. You will not be able to write to your host container, to your host operating system I meant. You'll not be able to write to it. Containers are read-only. Now, as I said, I'm inside my Ubuntu container and I need to install Nginx. I can do all things I do in a normal Ubuntu deployment. That is assuming I have apt. Let me try. So let me try an apt-get update. And Docker PS. Docker PS will list your running containers. So let me try that. Docker PS. Yeah. So you can see that I have started container from the image Ubuntu, and the name of the container is Objective Perlman, which is a random name taken by Docker. And the command I used to start the container was bash. Let me install Nginx. Oh, I'm sorry, I need to do this. I need to set the time zone. So we actually have Nginx installed. Let me try to start it. Yeah. So now if you list the processes inside your container, you can see Nginx running. And now you can go to your host. You will also see Nginx running. So the host has full access to the containers. So you can see that how the idea of the lightweight container part. The processes inside the container are visible to the outside world, but not to other containers. I would stress that. So the containers, each containers are self-isolated. So let me switch to my browser and show you that I have Nginx started. Okay, yeah, let me try this. Yeah, I hope you can see my browser, and I'm going to try localhost. Oops. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. We need to expose ports. So let me take that away. I'm sorry, that didn't work out. Okay, I hope we're back to my terminal. So sorry that didn't work out. I'll be able to explain why later on. But the idea is that you're able to start Nginx in your container. Now let me exit my container. I'm going to do Control D. Yeah. Now Docker PS lists the running containers. There's none. Docker images once more will list my images. Let me try Docker run Ubuntu once more. Sorry, I need to specify the command I need to start it with, bash. So do you remember what we did last time? We installed Nginx. Yeah. And you remember what I said much earlier is containers are ephemeral. They come up and they go. So you can guess that we will not have Nginx installed. Nginx is gone. Why? Well, we have to build an image which contains Nginx on top of the Ubuntu base image. That is where the Dockerfile comes in handy. Dockerfile allows you to specify a list of commands, and the syntax Dockerfiles can get huge, but as we all know in software, complexity can easily be broken down into steps. And once you learn the basic commands of Dockerfile, you'll easily be able to create multiple images based on a base image. I'll just quickly show you a hack which I learned is the docker commit command. So assuming you have started a container, and let me quickly do this, and I'm going to install Nginx once more. Yeah. And in the other tab, I'm able to see that I have the container running. Yeah. Oh, let me do this once. Sorry. Yes. So I have Nginx running in my container. And if you remember, if I exit this container, I will have lost all of it. I'll go back to the base Ubuntu without Nginx. And a quick hack which I've learned, which is very handy, is if you have a running container and you need to save this container to an image. You can do that using commit. So you can say docker commit, and Docker is helpful. You can easily get help for your command. So commit tells me that give me a container ID, which is over here. And now let me do Docker images, and you can see that it has created a new image. Look at the size. So that's Ubuntu, and this is the image which actually contains Nginx. Let me exit this container, and I've got this image. Let me tag it. You can tag images. I'll rename this Docker, I believe it's tag. Yes, Docker tag source image to target image. So I'm going to rename my tag. Docker tag image ID to, I'm going to call it my Nginx. I'm going to give it a tag of 0.1.0. And now Docker images will show me that I now have an image with, this is my image name. What do you think will happen now if I do Docker run -it my Nginx? Oops, no. Okay. And let me go inside the shell. Let me start. Yeah, and we should have Nginx in this. Yep. So what I effectively did is I used the base Ubuntu image and I created my own image, which now has Nginx. Okay. So why are we doing all this? Okay, this is because we want to use Docker for dependency management and deployment. This single image called my Nginx can be deployed across several machines which contain Docker Engine as the dependencies. So this image can be deployed across several machines. Each machine can contain numerable containers, all which will have the exact version of my Nginx. Now, assuming tomorrow Nginx tells us that please don't use the latest version, there's a bug we just found, can you switch back to the earlier version? All I need to do is I need to go to my Dockerfile, I need to change the Nginx version, I need to rebuild my image and do a deployment. And across my entire fleet of servers, all of the containers will now have the downgraded Nginx version. So this is how you can manage dependencies. So I believe I've covered Docker images. To list your Docker PS will list your running containers. Docker run is how you can enter a container using the flags -it, and the name of the image is how you can enter a container. What else do we have? Docker exec I will come to shortly. We saw Docker commit. So let's quickly move to Dockerfile. Now you don't want to type all of this again, apt-get update and apt-get install. Let me quickly go to let me create a Dockerfile. Okay, I'm going to paste this from somewhere else. I have it handy over here. Yeah, so these are basic. If you go to the Docker documentation and check out the syntax for Dockerfile, there are very simple commands. The most simplest you can learn to get up and running is run. Run is what you type in a running container. So what I'm telling Docker Engine to do is download this image, enter the image, do an apt-get update, and then do an apt-get install Nginx. I'm specifying -y because I don't want it to be interactive. I'm going to tell the apt-get to install Nginx by default without a prompt. And let me now so I have my Docker file. Let me do a docker build command. What will docker build do? Docker build takes only one argument, takes an argument which specifies the directory where your Docker file resides, which is the current directory. So I'm going to do docker build dot. So you can see it's the commands which you ran earlier inside the container are now being done automatically by docker build, thanks to the Dockerfile. This is the simplest Dockerfile you can have. Dockerfiles can get very complex, but as always, break it down and you'll be able to find out what's happening. Cool. So we can see that Docker built an image for me. Let me check out. Yeah. So it didn't tag it properly. So Docker build can take an argument of -t to tag it. So I'm going to say tag it with my Nginx 0.1.1. So Docker also supports caching. We earlier used the identical Ubuntu image and we ran apt-get update and install. So Docker is extremely smart. The file system which the Docker team has built supports layers and supports caching. So Docker knows that I'm using this exact image ID. So it will not download it. It will not actually run this command because it has already been run and Docker has cached it. So it saves a lot of time and it has built my new image. So you can see I have my Nginx 1.0.1.1. You can see they are the same sizes, the one which I built manually and the one which I built using Dockerfile, but they are different images. Their image ID is different. So that's a Dockerfile for you. Okay, now we have, so I would like to go to Docker Compose next, but what I will do is I will show you Docker Compose when we actually start deploying. So hopefully I've covered the basic Docker commands to make sure you're up and running. And now what we'll do is we'll deploy the app, and while deploying the app, we'll learn a bit more about Docker. So let's get hands-on. So what my objective is to create a Vue application and deploy it to my virtual server. I have a virtual server on DigitalOcean. The idea is not to use these automated cloud providers like Heroku, AWS. I could use AWS, but I'm just using a small droplet on DigitalOcean. I'm going to deploy this to this is my droplet, and I have Docker installed here. Remember, wherever you need to deploy Docker, you need to have Docker engine installed. So you can see I have nothing over here on my, oh sorry, I have a lot of images. You can ignore that. Yeah, but I don't have any running containers. Cool. So I have Vue. For people who are not aware, Vue is a front-end framework for quickly developing front-end applications. It requires Node. So I already have Node installed. I have Vue CLI installed, and I can use Vue create. Let me see what I'm going to create Docker-workshop, and I'm going to put this repository on MLH on GitHub. So let me quickly do this. Vue create Docker workshop. Yeah. I'm going to go with the default selection. Oh yeah, Gautam, sorry, I just saw your chat. Yeah. Docker names containers randomly, yes. And it has some history behind it. Cool. So I've initiated a very simple view application, and what is the first command to run? It tells me to run npm run serve, and this will start up my view application on my local desktop, local laptop, and I need to visit localhost 8080. Let me present my browser. All right, so I need to visit localhost 8080. Right. So I have my view application running on my development machine. So I'm ready to go. I'm ready to start developing. I'm ready to do all beautiful front end JavaScript stuff. But yeah, we need to deploy. The open source says release early, release often, and this is where Docker and GitHub come handy. So I'll quickly go to GitHub now. Go to GitHub. I'm going to use the MLH organization. I do think I have permissions for new repository. I've done it earlier. I hope that that's the same. Let me create a new repository, Docker workshop. I'm going to make it public. I want it to be empty. So right now we are wading into the territory of GitHub Actions, the combination of Docker. So I've put up Docker Workshop on MLH Fellowship, and I have an existing directory. So all I need to do is need to add these remotes. I need to push. I'm going to copy this and quickly go to my terminal. Oh, this is a headache, man. I need to switch between. Why is it so? Okay, I hope you can see my.
All good on this end.
Yeah, so I hope you can see my terminal back again. I need to copy. What did I do? I added a remote, and I'm pushing my code. Cool. So I now have my code under version management. Yeah. And I have a very simple view application. Now I need to deploy this. I need to deploy this to my remote server using GitHub Actions. I'm just going to copy a few template files which I usually use. So, and we'll look at them later. I have a few template files which I use. Dockerfile is one. Then I use Docker compose.yml, and I use handy makefile. The makefile just makes life easier for me. So let's inspect that if you want. So what is my Dockerfile telling me? Yeah, now this is a little bit more information, but it's not difficult to understand. What I'm telling Docker is, since I'm using a view app, I'm telling Docker to get the node image from Docker Hub, docker.io. Get the node image, copy my current working directory, this is my working directory. So I'm telling Docker, remember Dockerfile is executed with Docker build and the directory where Dockerfile resides. So I'm telling Docker to go to Docker Hub, get the node image, copy the current directory into /app. /app is automatically created. So the copy command creates the destination directory. So this is my working. All the files will get copied to /app, and I'm telling Docker to make. So these are the other commands which you will learn when you read up on the syntax of Dockerfile. I'm telling Docker my work there is /app, and I'm telling it to do npm install and npm run build. Why? Because I know that in my Vue app, that is the way to package my Vue application. I need to do npm run build. And for any new application, I always need to do npm install. The Vue create did an npm install for me, but usually when you start a new node project or you pull a new project from an existing repository, you always need to do an npm install to update the legendary node modules directory, which will, I think, never end. Wow. Yes. So that is what I want Docker to do. I want Docker to enter my /app, do an npm install, and build my run build. Yeah. And then the beauty is I can use multiple base images. Then I'm telling Docker to go to Nginx. So look what we have here. Instead of, let me quickly tell you, instead of Nginx, I could also use my Nginx, which we just built. So that's one thing which you can learn. I'm not going to do that because I didn't practice, and possibly we can try that out and you guys can try it out. You can try, instead of using the Docker Hub Nginx, which is optimized and optimized for Nginx, you can try building your own Nginx using Ubuntu as a base image and use that. You can do lots of stuff over here. For example, you can do from Ubuntu also, and you can run apt-get install, node, apt-get install, Nginx. There are a lot of variants. This Dockerfile is optimized for Vue applications, so it uses a very optimized version of Node and Nginx. All right, and then so for the second directive, I'm telling Docker to use the Nginx image, create a /app directory, and copy from my first image. Yeah, /app dist, because that's what. Now I'm going back to my Vue app. If I do npm run build, what it does is it packages my application into the dist directory. Yeah, that's what npm run build does. I already know this over here. So I'm telling Docker in the second part to copy all the bundle, which npm run build, and copy it to /app. And then I have my handy Nginx configuration files, which I'm going to copy over. So let me do that now, so just to make sure I have it. cp-r. What does conf contain? It contains a very simple Nginx conf, which we'll explore. Snake oil is just to make sure that HTTPS works with a dummy HTTPS certificate. So over here, I'm making sure my Nginx is not only installed, but it's also configured. So I'm going to copy my local Nginx and my SSL stuff to the images etc Nginx. Then I need to install Apache utils. Actually, we don't need this. This was some other project, but I need to install SSL cert. Sorry. So that's what my Dockerfile is telling me to do. Let's do that. Let's do a Docker build over here. So first I'll make sure I have a lot of images. So I'll just quickly I don't have anything. Let me do a Docker build since I have a Dockerfile over here. This might take some time. Yeah, Node takes a lot of space, so this only 45 MB. Yeah, so that's what it's doing. Oh wow, it's big. Oh yeah, actually this is the time taken by Docker to extract the images. Yeah, so it's downloaded the node image, it's copying my current directory to /app. Did I do something wrong? Yeah, no. So this is how it works. It builds intermediate containers. Now it's doing an npm install and an npm run build. Yeah, so you can see it creates intermediate containers to do the builds, npm install. Yeah, so it's done with the first part. Now it's doing the Nginx part. So you can see npm build was successful. And the copy part was too. Wow, that is a lot of steps. And believe me, I've seen much bigger Docker files. So what do we have now after a Docker build? Yep. Unfortunately, I didn't tag it, so I've got anonymous images. I hope my cache works. And I'm going to say my view app, or let me just call it Docker Workshop. I'm going to tag it as 0.1.0. Yeah, that's nice. It has cached everything, so we save a lot of time. Amazing. Now if I do Docker images, I can see I have my Docker Workshop image, which contains my Vue app as well as Nginx. So let's hack into it. Let's get inside it. Let me do Docker run Docker Workshop. No, why? What's wrong? Oh, cool. Let me enter into this, and so we have spawned a container of our workshop of our image, which you've just built. And remember /app, we created that as a work directory. Cool. So we can see that /app contains our bundled Vue application. Does it have Nginx? Yes. So I think we are fine. Unfortunately, I can actually start this image on my local machine, but that requires Docker Compose, which uh, tells us how to expose ports to the outside world. We can actually do that. Let me try. I don't think. Let me check my Docker Compose file. So why do we need Docker Compose? Docker Compose is a utility which you need to download separately. If you download Docker Compose is part of the Docker organization, but it does not come with Docker. You need to download and install Docker Compose separately. Docker Compose allows you to club services together. You can have a look at my YAML file for Docker Compose. So again, you need to understand the syntax for these. Yes, Gautam, we can do all of that. We can give a lot of the command line arguments. Oops. Yeah. So we can give a lot of whatever stuff we do on the Docker run, we can specify ports, we can expose ports, we can mount volumes, we can do a lot of stuff, and that is where Docker Compose comes in handy. By using Docker Compose, we don't need to remember the syntax, and Docker Compose helps you in deployment. So the Docker Compose YAML I'm currently using is, you can ignore all these keywords. This is, you will learn as you go along, but the basic idea is I'm telling Docker Compose that I need to run services, and you can have multiple services. So this is a Nginx service, since I'm going to use my Nginx image. Below that, I can also have a service for my for a Redis uh, memcache. Sorry, Redis. If I want to use a cache, I can also have a service for Postgres, and I can also specify dependencies between services. I can tell Docker that please first start the Postgres service, which again will use an image, will use a Postgres Docker image. After that is started, you can start my MLH Docker image. Now, so I need to make some changes. I'm going to rename my, name my application to Docker Workshop, just to be consistent. Yeah, let's start with version 1.0. Container will be Docker Workshop again. So what am I telling Docker Compose to do? I'm telling Docker Compose that start a service called Docker Workshop, use the image called Docker Workshop 0.1.0. Docker Compose can do both. It can do build as well as deploy. When I use Docker Compose build, it will use these arguments. So that tells Docker Compose to use the current directory, the context of the current directory, and build an image with tag of Docker Workshop 0.1.0. And when I do Docker Compose up, it will use these arguments. So Docker Compose up tells Docker to use this image, create a container name with Docker-workshop, and expose these ports to the outside world. Now, about ports, we have built a beautiful image, but as you saw earlier, just installing Nginx does not do the trick. Even starting the container does not do the trick unless we expose our ports, because Docker by default is secure. It does not expose ports to the outside world. The containers are you need to specify on the run command, or you can use Docker Compose, and the idea is that you expose ports using the ports tag, and this is the outside port. So if I give 8080, this means on my host, I'm exposing the port 8080, and I'm telling it to connect to the internal Docker container port 80. That is where Nginx is listening by default. So the outside port can be anything. Even the inside port can be anything. It depends on your Nginx configuration. My Nginx is listening on port 80. So I'm telling Docker Compose to listen on port 8080 outside. Let me change this back to 80 to make it consistent. And I'm also, since we're using SSL, I'm going to expose 443 on my host machine, and I'm telling it to connect to the Docker container port 443. So that is how we can map ports, expose and map ports from our outside world to our internal container. Restart always tells Docker that if our machine is restarted, please start this container. By default, if you don't specify this command, and if you reboot your machine, Docker will not start your containers. But if you give restart always, then Docker keeps a track of your containers, and if you reboot your machine, or even if you restart the Docker engine service, Docker will start this container by default. So that's the idea behind Docker Compose. I'll just quickly make changes to my make file. This is a very handy, I normally use just to keep things easy. Yeah. So this is, let me see. So the idea is just to create versions. So what I've done is now we are going to start with GitHub Actions. So I'm going to start with 0.1.0, and I'm also keeping track of the version in package.json. You'll see later why we are doing so, because I need my view application to also keep track of the version. Now we are ready to deploy. I think almost. There yesterday we started off with basically conceptually what Docker is, but we didn't touch too much on the conceptual level, as we wanted a hands-on session. So what we did is we ran through a few basic commands of Docker, how to list the images uh, on your hard disk, how to list the running containers, and the objective of this session yesterday and today is to deploy a vue.js application. So let me start by sharing my screen. I'll put up my terminal and my web browser. Okay, shell, we started off with some basic commands. Docker images, I've cleaned up my registry, my local registry on my hard disk. So we ran with some basic, what we did yesterday was we pulled a basic Ubuntu image and we then built a my Nginx image using the base Ubuntu image. So let's quickly recap that. And we used a Dockerfile. The one I have here is for the application, but if we want to, let's see, I'll just create a, let me just create a simple Dockerfile, which will install Nginx. Just copy it from some place, and so this is the simplest that a Dockerfile can get. What I need to do is I need to pull the Ubuntu base image. Then I'm going to run apt-get update and install Nginx. The commands run, the directive run is basically what you can do while if you log into your container. So let me do a Docker build. At the same time, I'm going to tag this image. I'm going to say Docker build current directory. That's where the Docker file resides. I'm going to tag it as my Nginx, and I need to specify a tag, the image name colon tag. I'm going to give a version of 0.1.0. So this is the automation which Docker gives you. Building your image just needs to be done once when you deploy or when you upgrade your application or your dependencies, and deploying to containers can be done whenever required. You can scale your containers up and down, but the image, building your image has to be done just once. So we can check the images which have been built. You'll see that Ubuntu has been downloaded from the docker.io registry, and this is the image which I have built. We can use Docker run to get inside an image. Docker run will spawn a container, and so this is the image I want to, oops, okay. So I'm gonna interactive mode, and I'm going to tell Docker that start the my Nginx image, spawn a container, and run the bash command. So this is how I can get inside my container. And I can see that I do have Nginx installed. I can start it. right? And I'll quickly mention that Docker containers are lightweight. They are not like virtual machines. So they use the same host operating system kernel, right? So this is a basic way you can use Docker build. Now, let's go back to our application. I have a very simple Vue.js application, which I can start by doing npm run start. Sorry, serve, npm run serve. This is a Vue.js application. I bootstrapped it using Vue create. Okay, let's go to the browser. So I need to visit localhost 8080. So this is on my local machine. I've successfully have the development version of my application. I now think this is good. Let me deploy it, right? So there are various ways you can go about it. And for that, for deployment, we're going to use GitHub Actions. This is my droplet on DigitalOcean. I have Docker Engine installed. To deploy your images onto different hosts, you need to have Docker Engine installed on that particular host. So you can see I have no containers running on my droplet on DigitalOcean. And I need to now deploy this to this particular remote server. First of all, what we can do is let's check the Dockerfile which I have for my application. My application requires Node because it's a Vue.js application. And I'm telling Docker to pull the node image, copy the current directory into /app, set the work dir as /app, and do an npm install and npm run build. This will build the Vue.js application and store it in /app/dist. That's how npm run build works. Then in the second stage, so your Dockerfile can have stages. In the second stage, I'm telling Docker to get the Nginx image from Docker Hub, create and /app. Remember, this /app is completely different from this one. This runs in a different container, and this is a different container. Create a directory and copy from the previous image. Copy the files from /app/dist, which is the npm run build, which is my built Vue.js application, the bundled Vue.js application, and copy it to /app. Then I'm going to copy my basic Nginx configurations into my image. And I need to then install Apache utils and SSL cert. SSL cert is because I'm using temporary HTTPS certificates. Why am I copying nginx.conf? If you're familiar with Nginx, then you need to specify your, all this is basic. I'm going to listen on port 80. I'm not going to do any changes to the basic Nginx configuration. The only change I'm doing is I'm telling what is my root. So you can see I'm telling Nginx that for / use the root /app and the direct and the index file as index.html. This is the only change I've done to the vanilla Nginx configuration. Right? So inside my image, inside /app, I will have my bundled Vue.js app, and inside nginx.conf, I'm telling that anyone who visits the browser on / will hit /app. That's my directory index. Let me do a build. So I can do docker build dot, and I'm going to name it, let's keep it consistent. I'm going to name it Docker Workshop. So I'm doing this build on my local machine right now. We'll deploy it a bit later using GitHub Actions. And so I'm going to Docker build current directory and tag it as Docker Workshop 0.1.0. So it's following the instructions from Dockerfile. Meanwhile, let me set up my repository. So as we said, we're going to host this on GitHub. Let me see what I have here. Yes, I've already pushed my code to GitHub. Let me go to GitHub. Yes, so this is a public repository which you fellows can later clone and learn, because you'll have all your Dockerfile and you can experiment with it. So you can see I've pushed my code, already pushed my code over here. Okay, this takes a bit of time. Oh, Node is huge, because I think Node also includes a lot of default modules. And we all know how large Node modules can get. Okay, it's done. It's copying the source to /app. Okay. So you can see while doing a Docker build, it creates intermediate containers for almost every command. So you can see it did an npm install. It's currently doing an npm install. It removes it. So the basic way Docker build works is for each run, for each command, it creates intermediate containers and it caches it. As I'll show you, if you run this command again, everything will be cached. That's pretty handy. Docker is very smart. And now what if I do docker ps? You can see it spawned another container and it's doing an apt-get. So for each run command, it spawns a container. All right, so it's built my Docker workshop image. Let me check it. Yep, I'm sure everything is fine over here. So I can say our build works. Now, why do we need Docker Compose? Docker Compose is a separate binary which is not part of the Docker installation. If you install Docker Engine, you need to download and install Docker Compose separately. And the basic syntax is I'm telling Docker Compose that I'm going to have multiple services. In this case, I'm only going to have one service called Docker Workshop. Use build image name contain. The idea is that Docker Compose, I can specify as I said, containers can run services like Nginx, but they don't expose ports by default. And you need to specify it in the Docker run command. But even using Docker Compose, you can specify it in a handy configuration file. So here I'm telling the Docker engine that open port 80 on the host and connect it to the containers port 80. Similar for SSL port 443. And after doing a build, name the image with the name and the tag of 0.1.0. And when you're spawning containers, name the container as Docker Workshop. I can name these, I can give whatever names I want. That's pretty handy. And restart always simply says that when the Docker engine is restarted, for example, when you reboot your server, restart always tells Docker to start this particular image always. If I delete restart always line, when the Docker engine restarts, this container won't be started. But I want my container to be started in case of a reboot, so I give restart always. So since I have my Docker Compose, let me do a Docker images. Let me delete this one. I don't want to have this because I'm going to rebuild this. Okay, I deleted this image. Cool. I don't have Docker Workshop image. And since I have my Docker Compose file, I'm going to say Docker Compose build. What this command will do is it will look for a Docker Compose.yaml file inside the current directory and follow the build instructions. And the build instructions tell it to take the Docker file from the current directory and build an image with this name and tag. Let's do a Docker Compose build. Oh, Zoom takes a lot of CPU, man. Wow. Zoom is consuming my CPU. All right. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, Docker thankfully cached a lot of the intermediate containers you can see. So it didn't actually do a lot of the apt-get stuff and npm install stuff. It actually did the npm install again. That's what we are looking. That's what we're finding. And it cached the copy, but it didn't cache the apt-get. That's because I deleted the image, I think. Anyway. All right. So we can even build using Docker Compose. Yeah, you can see I built Docker Compose. And I'm now going to do Docker Compose. I'm going to start my image. I'm going to start my container using my Docker Workshop image. The command is Docker Compose up. What will up do? Docker Compose up will look at Docker Compose YAML and it will say, it will tell Docker to use this image and start a container with this name and use these ports. Expose these ports on the host and connect to the internal ports of the container, which is Docker Workshop container. So let me do a Docker Compose up. I'm going to use -d to put this in the background. That's minus detach. So I'm going to put this in the background. Awesome. Let's do a Docker PS. Okay, now we actually have our container running. Just to confirm, I'm going to visit localhost port 8080. Sorry, I'm going to visit port 80. 8080 was my development version. This shouldn't work. And localhost port 80 is now my Docker container, which has the View app built inside it. All right. So what did Docker Compose up do? It used this image because that's what is specified in the Docker Compose YAML file. It started a container with the name Docker Workshop, and this is how the Docker entry point works. This is something more which we need to study. But basically, it uses the entry point of the Nginx image. And you can see ports. It's listening on all interfaces on the host on port 80 and connecting it. You can see the arrow, which connects it to the internal Nginx container, as well as, and also for port 443. So we actually have handy commands to build an image and use up and down to start and stop our containers. So that's all on my local machine. Now let's deploy it. Let's deploy it to my droplet. Let's go to GitHub and start actions. GitHub Actions. Let's look at GitHub Actions. If you go to the documentation, GitHub Actions is is simple, but they have a lot of options and the documentation is awesome. Basically, GitHub Actions allows you to build, test, and deploy your code. In short, it allows you to do CI/CD, continuous integration, and continuous deployment. I need to do this. I need to set up. So let me click this button and I'm going to say start. I'm just going to specify a blank.yaml file, which I'm going to override. I'm going to say start commit new file. All right. So inside .github workflows, it created a blank.yaml. Let's not use this for now. And if I do a git pull, because I committed on the web interface, let me pull it up. Okay, let's inspect this file. So what is it? GitHub workflows blank.yaml. Yeah, so there's a lot of syntax which you need to learn. But the documentation is there to help you. For this workshop, we're going to use a very basic commands. So I have an action file which I'm going to copy from a previous repository I worked on. I think let me check. Yes, I have this. So this is the one which we will use. I'm going to copy it over to my current. All right, so let's now take a look at this file. Yeah, so what am I doing? The name of my workflow is CD, continuous deployment. As I mentioned, the syntax for the YAML files are might look complex, but it's straightforward if you read the documentation. I'll just quickly go through it. So the idea is I'm telling GitHub that whenever there's a push, whenever I'm pushing a tag to the repository, whenever I'm pushing a tag starting with the letter V, only this condition, only when this condition is satisfied, run the following jobs. All right, so you can do on push, you can specify tags, you can specify branches, you can specify master, you can give regular expressions to tell GitHub that only run jobs when this on condition is satisfied. Let's assume this condition is satisfied. I then need to run two jobs. I need to do a build and I need to do a deploy. So here's my build job and here is my deploy job. Let's check out the build job. We'll get to runners in a while, but let's look at steps. Yeah. So what am I telling GitHub Actions? I'm telling it to check out the repository. This is what I've just copied blindly from the blank.yaml. I didn't change. The only thing I changed is what I did is I added this part because I only wanted to push tags, and I changed this runs on. I'll explain runs on shortly. And I added a run. I didn't change this. By default, GitHub will check out the repository and change directory into it. It'll cd into it. And then I'm telling the build job to run Docker Compose build. So yeah, it's pretty simple. So what GitHub Action does is it will do git clone Docker Workshop. It will cd into Docker Workshop and it will run Docker Compose build. That is what we did on a local machine, and that is what I'm telling GitHub Action to do on a remote machine, which is going to be my Citadel. Citadel is my remote machine. I'm telling GitHub Action to do all of this on my remote machine. Docker Compose build. This is the main idea behind it. And I then need a deploy job. And needs is very important. So I'm telling deploy, don't start until build finishes. That is, yeah, I'll get to that, Gautam. No, Docker Compose is installed on my remote machine. So yes, if you're using GitHub Actions and if you're using Docker Compose, all your remote servers need to have Docker Engine installed and Docker Compose installed. That's a good point. These are basic shell commands. This has nothing to do with GitHub Actions. Run executes in a shell. So you need to have Docker Compose installed on your host, on your remote server. So I'm telling jobs, GitHub Action jobs run in parallel. So you can have multiple jobs and you can deploy them across several runs on hosts. But in this case, I'm telling deploy, please let build complete and then run deploy. So in this case, the deploy is again simple. This is the main thing. So I'll just change this because I changed my, I changed my name to Docker Workshop. So let me change it over here. Yeah. So if you ignore these two lines, this is what I did to bring up my container, correct? And so that's what I'm telling the deploy job to do, is do Docker compose, detach, and start the Docker Workshop container. These are just fail-safe actions I've taken in case, because when I'm deploying, Docker Workshop will already be running. So I need to stop it first. So that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop Workshop. I'm going to remove the container, Docker rm-force, stop the Docker Workshop container, and then I'm going to start the container. Okay, so this is my YAML configuration file for GitHub Actions. Now let's configure GitHub Actions. I need to go to settings. To configure GitHub Actions, you need to be the admin of your repository. Once you're the admin, you'll see in settings, you'll see actions. Okay, so you can have local and third-party actions and a lot of stuff. I think if you subscribe to GitHub, you'll also get runners. You can host stuff on GitHub too. But in my case, I'm going to use DigitalOcean. So I need a self-hosted runner. So I'm going to add a runner. And I know that my droplet is Linux with x86. I'm just going to copy these commands. So let me go to my remote server. This is my remote server. I'm doing everything as a normal user. I'm not doing it as root. Why? Because I've added myself to the Docker group. Yeah. So I'm not going to run Docker as root. I'm going to do everything as a normal user, because that's what GitHub Actions want. GitHub Actions will not let you run this as root. I don't know why. I thought I'll figure that out later. For now, I'm going to do this as a normal user. Let me copy this. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it here. Done. And now it's going to download the GitHub runner. Copy that, paste it here. So these are steps you need to do on your remote machine, on your self-hosted runner. Of course, you need to automate this, but I'm just doing it manually for now. And let me untar this, copy, paste. Cool. And it then tells me to configure my runner. Yeah, let me try that. Let me copy paste. And cool, GitHub Actions self-hosted runner registration. Now it's going to authenticate this runner with my repository, and the authentication was it connected to GitHub. So that is what the runner is. The runner is a connection between this remote machine and the GitHub repository. Enter the name of the runner. I'm going to enter the name of the runner as Citadel. That's the name of my server. Enter any additional labels. So I'm just going to say Citadel for now. Runner successfully added. I'm going to use the default. Cool. And the last step is to run it. And in your YAML file, you need to specify the tag. So before running it, I'll double check. Have I used Citadel in my YAML file? I think I have. Yeah. So this is the idea of runZon. So I'm telling GitHub Actions that when you encounter this YAML file, run on this particular remote server. So what GitHub will do is it will contact the runner on this machine, on this remote machine, and run this particular job, right? So there's communication both from the runner to GitHub and from GitHub to the runner. Basically, it triggers. It's a trigger. It's like a hook. Now I'm going to let me just double check. I need to run it. Sorry, so it's the last step, and I realize it runs in the foreground. So I'm going to run this in the background. Cool. So it's connected to GitHub and it's running in the background and listening for jobs, right? Yeah, that's the word. It's going to listen for a job which the action is going to give it. So let me check my status. Let me commit this. I'll do a push. Yeah, now if you remember the directive for on, yeah, you can even specify, if I don't specify tags, it's going to do a deployment when I push to master also, which I don't want. And this is where continuous integration would work. If you specify push on branches, you can trigger jobs which only do a run of the test suite. But in my case, I'm saying when I push a tag, do a release. When I push a tag, do a build and a deployment. So let's create a tag. And I've created some handy. So let me do version 0.1.1. Okay. I'm going to change the version automatically. So if you check in Docker Compose, oh, it didn't. So sorry. Hold on. Oh, I need to change my application name to Docker Workshop. Yeah. Okay. This should work. Let me do a make. Cool. So my image is going to be tagged as 0.1.1. And let me commit this. I'm going to say releasing version 0.1.1. I need to push this to master. Ideally, I'd be doing this in a branch. All this stuff would be in a branch, not on master, but I'm just showing you how to push. So now I've pushed everything, and now I'm going to create a tag for release. I'm going to tag it as 0.1.1. Yeah. And in my make file, I've created a handy release. So it's just going to make release is going to tag it and push it to origin. So the idea is I'm going to say git tag version 0.1.1 and git push origin. Okay. I'm pushing a tag. So this is going to trigger a GitHub action. Hopefully, if things go well, I'm crossing my fingers. I'm crossing my fingers and I'm clicking on actions. And yes, you can see it has triggered version 0.1.1. Let me click on this action. And you can see it has a build job in progress. Let me click on build. And yes, it will give you all the, so you can see the setup job part. So you can see the run checkout. It cloned this repository, Docker Workshop, and it checked out the latest ref, which is my tag. And now it's, what is it doing now? We can inspect. It's stuck. Okay. It's running a one-liner script, which is just Docker Compose build. That's what it's doing. And I can actually go to my remote and check, did it get the job or not? Oh, I think my machine has, oh, it's still online. I think the machine is, let me disconnect and check. Oh, yeah. So it's doing it. It's building the image. It's on the Docker Compose part. My GitHub, my build action is currently on. That's nice. Oops, sorry. Yeah, you can see it pulled Nginx, but this is an old one. Did it pull Node? Yes. But I think these are old versions which I already had. Yeah, these things take time because I have a very slow uh, remote. I think it's just, oh my god, it's just 2 GB. Sorry about that. It's just 2 GB, and I think has just, yeah, it has 2 CPUs, virtual CPUs. I think it's around $20 a month. Yeah, good question, Gautam. That's what I was wondering too. I think GitHub Actions is doing something on its own, so you're right about that. It actually should show. I'm a little bit worried. Let me check. Is it doing it on Citadel? Run.sh. Oh, I think the runner got disconnected. So it could be. Let me try again. I'm gonna. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cancel this. Yeah, this is a problem about, even I've experienced the same problem in GitLab CI. If you try to cancel a job, it really takes time, and it's a little difficult to debug these automated workflows. But believe me, once you get it running, yeah, you just have to cross your fingers. Even if you got everything right, nothing should go wrong between GitHub and your remote server, because that you have a runner, you still have a dependency. Remember that. The GitHub runner should work without any bugs. You still need to depend on the GitHub runner to communicate properly with GitHub. Okay, is it cancelled? Okay, no, it's still in progress. Is it? Okay, I'm gonna kill my GitHub runner. Is it running somewhere? No, I don't think so. No, I have GitLab runner running, that's fine. Let me go to my admin panel. So I can go to settings, actions, and I can check the health of my runner actually. Oh, it's offline. Wow. Wow. So remember this, if you come into problems, make sure your runners are fine, okay? So my self-hosted runner is showing offline, which means I will now do this run.sh. Connect it to GitHub. And let me reload this page. Yes, it's active. So I really don't know what went wrong. I'm gonna cross my fingers again, and oh man, this guy is saying it's still running, so I'm gonna ignore this. I'm gonna ignore this, and I'm gonna build version 0.1.2 to make I'm going to release version 0.1.2. I'm going to make release, which will essentially tag it and push. Okay. I think it'll pick it up pretty quickly. Yes, it picked it up. And what about my, oh, there's something wrong here. It's not picked up the job. Oh. Queued. Oh. This guy is creating a problem. Let me try to stop this. Yeah, GitHub runner should be always running. Yes, it's a daemon. It'll be running as a daemon on your Droplet. Oh man, I think this version 0.1.1 has got stuck, and this guy is now queued. Yeah, I think all this is fine. I think my files are fine. Not sure why I didn't connect. Yeah, there's Docker Workshop everywhere. Oh, so this guy is stopped. Oh, great, 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 cool. So let's hope the other one has picked up. Oh yeah, this one has started. Let's hope this one is doing well. We have the build job running, and did my yes, cool. So it picked up the build job. Now, Gautam, to answer your question, I'll have to push this in the background. But yeah, I can open a separate. Let me see if there are intermediate containers. No. So the problem with permissions. Okay, so it's definitely running the scripts for, so you can see it has picked up run.sh and it's running some related scripts. So these are the shell scripts which GitLab runner is running, and let me try fc and debug this. Nope. I think the first one did a, I think it's got stuck. GitHub runners got stuck. So we can wait for some time, or I think we can continue and assume that yeah, it picked up the current version. This guy is stuck. But definitely it is running. I think npm install, is it stuck on that? Oh wow, yeah, cool. All right, so it was just taking time. I'm sorry, I think my remote server is slow. Yeah, that's the problem. No wonder GitHub runner dies. I think it requires a big fat machine. Anyway, so it's picking up npm install now. Yep. Cool. So it's doing an npm install, and now it's doing an npm build. Yeah, build complete. Yeah, now it's doing the Nginx stuff. So you can see whatever I did on my local machine, which was Docker Compose build and Docker Compose up. That's exactly what I'm telling GitHub runner to do via the YAML file. And you can do a lot more, of course. I'm just doing a basic build and deploy, but there's a lot more you can do, and there's a lot more error handling you can do. Like I've not put any error handling over here. Yeah, cool. So my build is done, and if I now do a Docker images on my remote server, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me grep for workshop. Yeah, so you can see that it has built Docker workshop 0.1.2, and it's now going to do the deploy job, which is just Docker Compose up. I think after this, hopefully, no, actually, to be honest, the build and deploy takes the same time every time because you're pushing a new version, so it's not going to cache anything. So make sure your build process is lean. And of course, get a big fat machine. So, Will, how much time do we have?
Hello, we have about half an hour or so. You've got plenty of time.
Okay, so what I'll do is I've done a basic build and a deploy, and I'll show you one more build and deploy just to make sure things go right. But I'll just let you know another detail is I've deployed it to this my remote server, which I've pointed to domain name, so we can actually see the view application live. Oh, this guy is really stuck, man. What is it doing? Okay, takes time. Wow, awesome. So we have got a deploy done too. And if we go to the summary, it took 8 minutes. It's really bad. Or depends. I mean, it's for a very simple application, 8 minutes was a lot of time for a build and deploy. That's cool, not a problem. So I can do Docker PS now, and I can see Docker Workshop 0.1.2 running on my remote machine, and the port redirection, everything is taken from the Docker Compose file. And I've actually pointed my domain to my remote server. I've created a domain called Docker, I think. Yeah, Docker Workshop. Yeah, right. So the first thing was a cache. So you can see my view.js app running and deployed on a remote server. I think we are clear. Just to make sure, we are not doing any hanky panky. I'm gonna deploy another version. So let me quickly modify my view.js app and deploy version 0.1.3. I'm gonna go to my where is it? SRC folder. I'm gonna go to my components. No, sorry. I'm just going to display the version. That's the only change. I think it's in components. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to quickly modify my view.js application. And yeah, I'm just going to copy some code over here. I'm not going to use hello world. I'm basically taking the version from my package.json file, and I'm not going to use hello world. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, oh wow, of course we can always test it, right, on a local machine. Of course, before deploying, please test. Yeah, so let me see if this works on my local machine first. I'm going to do npm run serve. Yeah, and I'm going to go to localhost 8080. Yeah, so I've removed a lot of stuff, and I'm displaying I'm displaying the version number, right? So this is what I want to get deployed over here. I want to display my version number in my application. So let's deploy this. I think the view application works nicely, and I'm going to say, I'm going to go to my make file. I'm going to say let's deploy version 0.1.3. I'm going to make it. Let's say git ci-am releasing version 0.1.3. Of course, all of these things can be automated, but yeah, depends on how much you want to automate. And I'm going to do a release. And let me check the actions. It picks up the actions real fast, but then it takes a bit of time. It's picked up my latest release, and yeah, I think we need to wait for 8 minutes. If you have any questions, you can probably post it in the chat. Okay, it got the new job. It's saying succeeded for the earlier one, and it picked up the new build job as well. So that's nice. Yeah, it's got Loving Blackwell. It's picked up the new containers. It's doing npm install. Oh wow, that's fast. That is nice. Cool. It's already on npm install. Let me see if it's caching it. I wanted to check if it's caching. It should actually. Ideally, Docker is smart. It should be caching some of the stuff. Let me check that. I'll have to check why you're getting a permission denied, Aish. Yeah, it does cache it. So that's awesome. Yeah, kudos to Docker, man. That's awesome. So you can see that since I'm using the same node version, it's going to cache that. It's going to cache my intermediate containers. It's going to cache npm install as well. Cool. That's nice. And so the build is done and the deploy is done. Oh, I didn't know. Yeah, I thought as much it should use the cache. So this time we got it done in 2 minutes. And let me reload my, yeah. So that's it. So we have successfully made a change and we have deployed changes in 2 minutes to a remote machine, right? So thanks to Docker and GitHub Actions. So Will, yeah, I think I'm done. I think if there are any questions, probably we can take some questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rohan. Really do appreciate it. Does anyone have any questions for Rohan about this workshop or about the first workshop or anything to do with Docker?
Ayush, for permissions, Docker normally runs as root, and if you're doing it as a normal user, make sure you're added to the Docker group. You will not. What do you mean you don't have runners? If you don't have, what do you mean, Gautam? I'm sorry. All you need is a droplet, or you need a virtual private server, and you need to connect it to GitHub.
If you need a virtual machine in the cloud, I can give you $50 of Google Cloud credit for free. So if you want some free credit to run a VM in the cloud, hit me up and I can do you some favors there. If you don't have that, if you don't want to use Google Cloud, you can also go to the GitHub Student Developer Pack and you can access $100 of DigitalOcean credit. as well as I can give you top-up codes. Don't worry, I've got loads. You can also get AWS credit and Azure credit, so you can use pretty much all of the big cloud services. However, I have pretty much unlimited Google Cloud credit. So send me a message on Discord and I'll send you a link.
No, I'm using HTTPS, but I'm using a dummy certificate, Snake Oil. So if you Google for Snake Oil in Nginx, I'm not using a authorized certificate authority, but it is definitely on HTTPS. Yep. But I'm using this over here, this stuff. That is what this package does. If you install, I'm not sure about this one, but if you install the SSL cert pack, you will get Snake Oil, which is kind of a dummy if you just want to work on dummy SSL certificates. And then when you really want, you need to purchase your SSL certificates. And it's pretty easy to configure SSL with Nginx. It's not much of a... the go-to is to always use Nginx with SSL, and your Docker containers are always on HTTP. So I don't use HTTPS on the Docker containers.
Cool. Has anyone else got any questions?
Yeah, and I've put the repository up on... Yeah, you have, it's public, so you guys can check it out. You can check out the code regarding Dockerfile, Docker Compose. And when you clone it, you can go to settings and set up actions. This is how you can set up actions. I think, Will, I think GitHub gives some GitHub hosting. I'm not sure for students. We can check that out probably.
I'll definitely have a look and report back in Discord.
Yeah, I think you can do some host runners on GitHub itself instead of self-hosted runners.
Perfect.